Welcome to Lake Cumberland Amateur Radio Association. You can find us at LCARA.net, on Facebook, on YouTube, and on Instagram. If you're enjoying the videos we're producing here at LCARA, please help our club out by hitting that subscribe button. Also, give us some feedback on our videos. Click the like button, share with anybody who may find it interesting, and be sure and hit the bell icon to make sure you get notified of the next video release. Hello folks, this is Chris, KY4CKP, and this week we wanted to bring you a video with some of our ongoing efforts on the emergency communications trailer. And so we just wanted to show you part of what we're doing, even though we're still getting it out in the field and in the community. We just want to show you some of the work we're doing, working on our solar panel addition right now, and some of the other additions to the trailer. And we've covered some of that in previous videos and YouTube or Facebook and Instagram posts. I want to cover a couple things here, and part of that is we are and have been, our Don AC4DM has been making some custom panels for the trailer to go on the 19-inch racks. So the one that we were working on this week is for the meter and the charge controller for the solar panels we're going to use. We did the video showing the two solar panels right now. We may potentially add more later. We wanted to make a custom panel for these, and he's already made custom panels for projects in the past, and he was gracious enough to spend his time to help show KY4BDP Brian and myself the tools he uses and the techniques he uses to do this. And it takes a little bit of time, but you get a nice clean result for your effort. So we got this meter we're going to be using for the system, and then we also have the charge controller that we'll be using for this. It's a little bit older equipment, but we tested it, all works just fine. And it's only going to get temporary and occasional use. If if you were going to be doing something for a permanent installation for your house or business or something, you could certainly upgrade some of this equipment, upgrade to an MPPT style controller as opposed to the PWM style. But for occasional use for us, and the fact we have the equipment on hand, just means it'll be effectively a reduced cost. It's money we've already spent as a club. So we've got that meter, we've got this charge controller, and we want to create a custom 19-inch panel. We've got a small 19-inch rack in the trailer and a full-size one, floor to ceiling. So here's just the back of the charge controller. Again, you can have power in and then the power out. And the charge controller will show you your charging rate, the current status of the batteries, outgoing rate on the batteries, and sort of the normal things if you've worked with solar in the past. Some of the newer controllers can show you quite a few things, and we'll have LCD, pretty fancy LCD screens and all the rest. But again, we don't really need quite all of that just for the trailer. Again, that's going to get some occasional use throughout the year. So again, this is just the equipment we already had. Now what I want to show you next here coming up is a small rack that we've put in the Encom trailer and a previous custom panel that Don did using the same techniques we're going to show you here in this video. So in this picture, if you can sort of imagine to your right, right at the end of this desk, there's a floor-to-ceiling 19-inch rack that we've now installed. So we have the short one and we have the tall one. And while you're sitting at this desk, and we have the window there right in front of us just to the left, you'll be able to see the status of the house batteries if you're on shore power, and then of course the solar as we're putting together now. And we'll have other equipment potentially in this rack as well, some other battery backups and things. So it's all going to be right there, handily visible. So we're going to kind of show you how to make a panel similar to this one we see on the screen. So this is kind of what we ended up with before paint. And so we had the power meter, which will kind of be that hole on the left, and then we have the charge controller, which is the rectangular hole on the right. And so what we want to kind of cover is sort of some of the tools and techniques on how we got to this stage, and then we'll kind of finish off there towards the end of this little video with just doing some painting. This new panel is going to be blue. We had the red panel previous, and we're going to go blue with this next one. So how did we get to this point? And there's any number of techniques and tools you could use to do some of the work we're about to talk about. We're just going to show you what we had on hand and what we did. So a lot of it begins with Don had already pre-measured and pre-cut the panel size. Again, he's made a number of boxes for projects and panels and things. And so he'd already measured for the 19-inch rack size. He's already made some of these before. And then what we want to do is we measured the meter, which you can see sitting there on the table. We also measured that charge controller, and of course we found the center of this piece of aluminum, and then we wanted to find the centers of each, the right hand and left hand, where we wanted to put the meters and the controllers. And we just start laying all that out with pencil so that we can begin to make sure things are going to be where we want them to be visually. And then we'll start drilling and doing the things that are a little more permanent. So you always want to, as carpenters are fond of saying, measure twice and cut once, and because it's hard to put material back if you take too much. So that's what the first stage was all about. First getting the panel the correct size that we wanted, as far as top to bottom, left to right, and then finding centers and measuring for the components we were about to use. And now this is one of the tools. I wanted to point this out. I was not quite aware of these tools. Don called these knockout tool. The concept I'm familiar with, and he's done a lot of electrical work in his career. And you know, if you're familiar with electrical junction boxes and things, a lot of times they have what are called knockouts. They have these little round circles that have already been punched into them, and you can knock them out so that you can pass your cabling and conduit and stuff in there. Well, this tool set, and there's another little piece to it we'll see here in a second, this allows you to put a knockout hole wherever you want it. Maybe you need to put one someplace and there isn't a pre-existing knockout for it. You can just create your own. And so you can see the little bits there, sort of a little bit of an odd shape, but they allow you to manually create a knockout of various sizes. He's even got some much bigger ones than we see here. And it allows you to put in that knockout, nice clean hole wherever you might need one, even if there's not a pre-existing one. So I wasn't really aware of this tool, but for that kind of work, it's the best tool for the job, and he happened to have one on hand, of course. So we use that to help get some things started. Again, working with aluminum, it's kind of, in a lot of materials, it's kind of good to start with smaller holes and smaller sizes to what you need, and then slowly work your way up, so you don't stress the material and stress your tools too much. So again, just kind of showing the knockout, you operate it manually, usually, especially with relatively thin metals. It only takes a few twists with a wrench to make that nice clean hole. And typically you don't even have to sand them or anything after. They come out nice and clean to begin with. So it was really interesting to see this tool. And Don tends to have a lot of this stuff where it's tools that, even if you're familiar with a fair number of tools, he manages to bring one out now and then that's a bit of a surprise, but very interesting to learn about. So here's kind of showing where we just cut a nice clean hole through that aluminum, fairly heavy gauge aluminum sheet there, and again, don't hardly even have to sand it or anything. There's no burrs or anything really. So maybe not something you're just going to run out and buy unless you do have an ongoing need for it, but certainly does this job very well. Of course, that's exactly what it was designed to do. So we started to make square holes. We start by putting some round holes in there, and then you can cut out into square holes. We were using a jigsaw with a metal blade for this. You'll see that in some of the pictures coming up. And you can already see we've cut out the hole for the, and here's kind of where we went in with the jigsaw. Cut out the hole for the more rectangular charge controller, which you can see sort of towards the bottom there with the blue label. You can also see the meter down there. Now it had a round back part that stuck out in the two main terminals. So we did a multi-step process to make sure we got that in there and in there centered. And then you can kind of see on that meter down there bottom center that it's got 4 retaining screws around the 4 corners. And then we drilled those in there as well. So we just took our time, measured everything. If we were going to be a little cautious, we would do things on the small side, because you can always take away more material, right? It's hard to put it back. So here you can see we drilled the holes for the 2 terminals so that the meter would sit on the metal. Now we could draw the circle around that round part that sticks out the back, cut that piece out, and that would let it drop down to where we can then get a good measurement on those screw hole placements. And then we finally put those in, and then when we're done, it'll sit nice and perfectly flush on the metal and still be nice and centered and everything. So again, we just took our time with these panels. You're going to make it once, and so it doesn't hurt to put a little bit of extra time in it on the front end. A lot of ways to do a lot of these jobs. These are just kind of what we were doing and some of the tools we had at hand and that Don had. So we got everything cut out pretty much. There you can see the meter's going to sit nice and flat, and you'll see here in a minute we just drilled out those 4 holes because now we could mark them nice and accurately up against the metal, and you can obviously see the cutout for the charge controller. So everything will sit nice and flush. It'll look good, look professional, and of course then on the outside edges and corners we'll put in some holes for the 19-inch rack mounting part itself. So again, it took a little time, but it was fun to see some new tools, see how they work, and see how to actually put one of these together. We knew Don had made a number of these kinds of things over the years, and even saw that red one that he made just a few weeks ago. But he did that when one day when we just didn't happen to be around. So it was good to kind of see his process and see some of the tools he uses. So here we're just drilling the screws for the four corners of that meter, and that's one of the last things we'll do here. We saw that earlier on, saw what the finished product pretty much looks like. And as we start getting towards the end here, we'll finish up with some final sanding. We also put sort of a commercial grade kind of a stripper on the metal, made sure that all oils and fingerprints and everything were off of it. Give us a nice smooth with the sanding, and then very clean surface with the stripper to put final paint on, and let the paint dry overnight. And I'm not sure if he's going to put a clear coat on that. He may put a clear coat after that as well. Then we can mount the instruments and mount things into the rack. So there's how we got to our nice centered and even holes and everything for the meter and the charge controller. And that's sort of some of the techniques you could use, and some of the things you might want to think about if you want to put together your own custom panels for racks and things. Or just if you're building a box, a project box or something, sometimes you can't really find what you need. You could potentially build one. So here we are getting towards the end. We're doing some painting. We've got a nice blue there. We had the nice red for the other one. So we're going to put some nice blue on this one. We put first coat, let it dry a few minutes, put a second coat, and again letting it dry overnight at that point, and then we can put final holes for the 19-inch rack itself and put the equipment in there, the meter and the charge controller. So again, a little bit of time, but it should basically last the lifetime of the usage and look really good in the meantime. So he had the scrap aluminum pretty much laying around from other projects and things. So hopefully these kinds of videos, they seem to be of interest to you folks, and that are doing your own projects and trailers and things. And hopefully these will at least inspire you. Again, there's a lot of ways to do these kinds of projects, but hopefully these will inspire you with somewhat what can be done, some of the ways it can be done, and you can come up with your own solutions. So this is Chris, KY4CKP 73.